Welcome back to Obscure Star Wars EU, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 online-only short stories. Now, I've talked about these before. It was a really long time ago. It was in a video called The Most Obscure Star Wars Legends Mythos Part 2, an apt title given that the stories fall under a branch called Star Wars Mythos. But I have long felt that I didn't shine a proper light onto these stories, so I wanted to talk about them in a bit more depth here with an actual look at the website itself. Now, before we look at the website, though, I wanted to point out that Star Wars Mythos was released between January of 2013 and October 2013. These were online short stories that were on the website for Sideshow Collectibles, who Sideshow Collectibles created some really cool statues, and they do continue to make these statues to this day. This original wave was in 2013, pre-Disney, for these statues that they made, and with each statue, there's a corresponding story that can still be accessed on the Sideshow website via the archive in the Wayback Machine. In 2018, Sideshow Collectibles created a new series that includes characters from the Disney timeline. So they've continued to exist as creating these statues, but the statues nowadays don't have accompanying stories. They are mixed of old and new timeline. So those aren't really what we're here to talk about. What we are here to talk about, though, is the stories that came out between January and October of 2013. So I have a screen recording here pulled up of the original website here with this great logo, and it had the Sideshow logo up here, and this is the tab that says Stories. And I'm going to go ahead and read the overview that talks about it, which is positioned beside the actual statues in this absolutely incredible photo. So it says, Overview. The Star Wars universe is limitless with possibilities, its mythology ever-expanding. Our art team wanted to contribute to that expansion by telling new stories about some of the most compelling Star Wars characters. With the encouragement of Lucasfilm, we created the Mythos line of statues. This line of collectibles will be populated by characters from new and existing storylines. We will bring history, unique details, and personal choices to each in order to elaborate on who they are. Through the design and sculpt process, our goal is to delve deeper into these established characters and offer our own interpretations of what they have done outside of the Star Wars canon. Our art team is taking the themes and core concepts common to the Star Wars mythology, such as love, honor, hope, despair, and adventure, and accentuating those themes to achieve a collection of figures unlike any we've previously offered. Our vision is to portray moments in the imagined lifetimes of these characters and reveal them in a new way, in a new light. We hope to capture the imagination of Star Wars fans all over the world and share with them our adventures in that galaxy far, far away. This comes from Zom Gilliland, creative director of Sideshow Collectibles. Now, note that they said outside of the Star Wars canon. That being said, these stories don't contradict any previously created EU. I think what this refers to more is to the collectibles themselves are not influenced by the canon and they've pulled artistic stuff from elsewhere. The stories themselves, specifically one in particular, go out of their way to reference the Star Wars EU. So it's kind of hard for me to imagine that these exist outside of universe, as it says there. Now we have these exclusive art pieces here. Darth Vader, Sith Lord. Darth Maul, Dark Disciple. Ben Kenobi, Desert Nomad. Note that Dark Disciple is the name of the unfinished Clone Wars arc that would have taken place in Season 6 of the EU TCW, but it didn't come to pass. And then we've got Lomrock, Jabba's Executioner, as well as Boba Fett, Bounty number 239. We'll start with the Boba Fett story here. As that loads up. And this one is probably the least good one in my opinion. But it does come with this art piece that is quite spectacular. All the art pieces for this series are absolutely incredible and just look really, really good, as you can tell. The Sideshow Collectibles logo, and it's got Boba here as depicted in the story. So it depicts an event from the story. So Boba Fett Bounty number 239 is the name of this story. It's very short. I will read it quickly. Bounty number 239 is a paranoid scum. No surprise there. After making enemies in over a dozen systems, making deals, breaking them, selling tainted product, even letting in some so-called friends take the rap for one of his own schemes on Corellia, that Bith Slimo deserves everything that's coming for him. Too bad no one told him that what's coming for him is me. Taking this guy down won't be the usual walk in the park. He's taken that paranoia and used it to his benefit. Anyone who tells you that cheaters never prosper clearly never talked to this guy. The small army he's hired would bankrupt a hut. Aside from 20 or so garden variety mercenaries, he's somehow been able to acquire the services of those Trandoshan twin brothers, the ones who gave me so much grief during that job on Ryloth, and a trio of IG assassin droids. It'll take more than an EE-3 and a jetpack to get this done, and get out in one piece. These droids are shielded against ion weapons. Clone Wars era droid poppers won't cut it on this run. Finesse isn't in the cards. The way I see it, the only option is to go big. Pack as much heat as I can carry. Hit the compound with the proper combination of shock and awe, and leave that Bith Poodoo as a big-eyed smear in the smoking ruin that he used to call a compound. So that is the story. And then it has the art here and the statue, and you can take a look at that. Which I probably won't click the statue for everyone, though, because it takes a while to load stuff up on the website. And, would have cost $324. Now, the cool thing is, I believe these short stories were printed on the box of the product. So does that mean you have to track these down for a completist's sake to get these statues with the short story that's printed on the box, and I think printed on a card within the story as well? Well, I'll leave that up to some of the completists to decide. People like Arthur Lowry or Chris Nelson. I would love to have the opportunity to get these stories in print, but due to the price, I don't foresee that as being an opportunity that I'll be able to enact upon. Next we have Darth Vader, which this story is somewhat interesting. It's a kind of generic story, though. So it says, volcanic fire cease and spits at his feet as the molten river roars, its rumblings an echo of his agonized howls on this blackened shore 5 years gone. The lava's glow bathes him in scorching heat. Encased in that black armor, he feels nothing. A hissing sound escapes his helmet as his unfeeling cyborg hands release it, lifting free the face of Darth Vader and exposing the ruined head of Anakin Skywalker. The scorched Mustafar air fills what remains of his lungs. Wheezing, he breathes in as deep as he can, welcoming the pain, embracing its familiarity, and its contrast to the stale, tasteless air to which he's grown accustomed. The pain brings the clarity he seeks, the pain of fire and of memory. He holds the helmet before him and gazes into the black and soulless eyes of the creature he's become. Behind the mask, the river of fire flows. Ghostly echoes of his past flows with it. There have been many paths to choose in the course of his life. The choices made there eventually led him here, to the site of his rebirth, where he was baptized in agony and betrayal. The bright blade of his best friend together with the molten fires of this hateful world took everything. He was left to die with only his resolve. That same resolve drove him to dark deeds in the name of a greater galaxy. It carried him through his betrayal of Master Windu, the slaughter of his Jedi brothers and sisters, and the death of his wife. All that was Anakin Skywalker was burned away by action and fire. All that remains is the purity of this thing in his hand. The black, skull-like visage returns his gaze as he takes one last rasping breath of the air around him. Raising the mask to his head, he locks it in place. Behind him, his black cape whips and snaps in the hot wind as the familiar sound of Lord Vader's mechanical breathing returns. So this story basically just establishes that Vader went back to Mustafar to visit it and reflect. I guess that's cool. It's definitely well written, quite exceptionally written as it happens. But that story is one that I didn't actually cover in the original video. So for those of you who remember maybe seeing the original video, that's a new piece here. Next is Darth Maul, Dark Disciple, which again is written kind of similarly to the Darth Vader Sith Lord short story. The art again for these is incredible, but this is a very short story. It says, "The winds throw a stinging sand across his bare skin, while his black robe snaps around the metallic hilt of the saber staff hanging dormant at his waist. Maul is coiled, lethal, the force of his will pent up with the violent need for his muscles to spring. Closing his eyes, he finds and grasps an agonizing memory. Torture. His memories are of pain, of electric fire arcing from the contorted fingers of his master, coursing through his synapses as he cried out for relief. There would be no relief, though, short of marshalling his hate. He knows that hate unlocks the dark side. Only once consumed with hate would a master end the agony. Anger builds around him now in waves. He allows it to increase, fed by those memories of pain and of his master's mocking laughter. A terrible rage grows, swelling within him, and a roaring fills his ears. His eyes snap open, glowing in horrible hues of red, orange, and yellow. His anger is pure hatred, and that hatred explodes." So due to it mentioning the wind sending sand stinging across his face, I'm assuming that this probably takes place shortly before his duel with Qui-Gon Jinn, because he's out on Tatooine, seemingly, and he just reflects on some torture that he endured from his master, which we do know happens, but this is just another account of the EU kind of doubling down on that as being a part of Darth Maul's history, and so it's interesting that he reflects on it to build his anger. Very interesting stuff here. Next we have the story Ben Kenobi, Desert Nomad. This one I really like quite a bit. I think it's quite fun. So Ben Kenobi, Desert Nomad is this short story, and I absolutely love this art piece. Absolutely phenomenal. Looks amazing. So it says, "The boy is safe. Lars cannot hide his distaste for me, given my connection to the child's father. Beru, however, is clearly smitten with the infant, but my presence is not welcome in their house. That is fine. I'll watch over the child from a distance. But first I must ready myself. I will build a shelter across the Dune Sea from the Lars homestead, close enough for me to sense any danger to the boy, far enough away that the Empire may not discover him if they find me. Master Yoda's training was well advised. I have already established a link with the spirit of my master Qui-Gon. His teachings endure from beyond the netherworld of the Force. There is a measure of comfort found there, and someday, when my task is accomplished, I might be able to join him in that place. But for now I feel old beyond my years. Desert life ages flesh and spirit, so I can only expect this to worsen the longer I remain on this world. The Tatooine storms will whip me with sands like a scourge. Each night I will hear in the winds the howls of my murdered Jedi kindred. The Jedi are all but extinct. The few who survived Order 66 are continuously being hunted. Across the galaxy, I'm certain more will die. When I feel their deaths, I'll dare not reach out to learn who it was, or to assist in any way. If I am discovered, then the boy may be discovered as well, and all will be lost. I already wrestle with my weariness. The loss of my friend to this evil creature who has replaced him fills me with bitterness. But I must remember the words of my master. Be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment. The boy is what matters. He is the future. Fool. I'm an idealistic fool. And blind, too. Anakin's darkness was obvious. I should have foreseen this and prevented it. I failed him. My failure ended the Jedi Order. The boy is our last hope. I failed Anakin, but I'll not fail Luke. The son of Skywalker must become a Jedi." So, in this story, a couple key things are mentioned. It's mentioned that Obi-Wan has made his connection with Qui-Gon, and it's mentioned his tense relationship with the Lars, both Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, which is well established within the lore. Since he's made contact with Qui-Gon, it means it has to take place after the Last of the Jedi story arc, because he was having trouble connecting to Qui-Gon in that story, and, like, he wasn't sure if he was there, etc., etc. So he's finally made contact with Qui-Gon, so that means this must take place after that. Or perhaps I have that the other way around, because I know in the Kenobi novel, it deals with that as well. So I can't remember which off the top of my head, because it's been a little while since I read them both. Someone will correct me in the comments. But in either Last of the Jedi or Kenobi, Obi-Wan's having a hard time connecting to his master. But then in the next one, whichever one takes place after, I believe Kenobi takes place after, it establishes that he has indeed made connection with Qui-Gon. And it talks about how he had a hard time connecting with him at first. And so that means that essentially this story must take place after that, because it's established that the connection with Qui-Gon was made. I really do like this reminiscence. It's very well done. It's also mentioned that Obi-Wan is aware that the sun will scorch his face. So since he wasn't aware of that in the Kenobi novel, that means that this short story must take place shortly after that. I really like some of the insights we get there. It's very nice from Obi-Wan's perspective. But moving on to Lomrock, we get to Jabba's Gamorrean Executioner. And this story of the 6 is by far the best. There is a lot of meat on this bone. The art piece is absolutely phenomenal and features a returning character from the Bounty Hunter video game. And we never knew what happened to him. We didn't get his death established in the EU until now. This story brings back a super obscure Star Wars EU character from the Bounty Hunter video game, which is so stinking cool. So here's the story. And Lomrock is a character that was featured in the EU as well. I believe in some Kevin J. Anderson related stories. So, the story to this one. The life of Longo Two Guns, that's the character from Bounty Hunter, became a dizzying whirl as his body tumbled down the shaft under the trap door, which had opened beneath his feet. At the bottom, sand forced its way into his eyes, his ears, and his nostrils as his face broke the fall. Hoots and laughter, fresh from the orifices of a dozen different beings, fell upon him from somewhere above. A Gamorrean grunted his amusement. A chattering Jawa spouted something incomprehensible. Loudest of all, though, was the deep guttural rumbling of a gloating hut. Longo spat out a mixture of blood and grit, and curses as he struggled to his hands and knees. One of those curses took the name of the creature who'd put him here. Jabba, he coughed, then spat again. Jabba, what? As he raised his head, Longo saw the massive bulk of Jabba the Hutt, high above him, flanked by his major domo and the bounty hunter Jango Fett. Various appendages belonging to members of Jabba's ecstatic entourage waved triumphantly and mockingly in the air above him. Several of the creatures had begun a sort of chant. "This is it," Longo shouted. "You're going to keep me in a hole? Me? How long do you think this will hold me, Jabba? How long? When I get out of here, I'm going to—" His bravado was interrupted by a heavy thud from behind. Whirling, Longo caught a glimpse of a green, fleshy mass, mere inches from his face, before a massive arm knocked him flying across the sandy floor of the pit. Longo came to rest on his back, then sat up. Resting his hands on the butt of a giant battle axe, the largest Gamorrean he had ever seen glared at Longo with eyes of green fire. The giant stood a full 2 heads taller than his porcine brethren. Layers of fat rippled over a mass of muscle beneath his dark green skin. There was intelligence in those eyes, a cruel intellect previously unseen in the species. Jabba's booming chuckle echoed down upon Longo. "Perhaps you are familiar with my executioner Lomrock." The Hutt's arm quivered as he gestured at the massive Gamorrean. "Renowned for his killing prowess in fighting pits across the Outer Rim. The blade he wields has ended the life of every creature he has met in combat. With it, Lomrock has even slayed a mighty Gundark. So tell me, bounty hunter." Jabba's eyes narrowed as he leaned toward the edge of the pit. "Unarmed and unarmored, how do you think you will fare against the likes of Lomrock?" Grunting, the porcine giant raised his axe high overhead and held it there. Cheers and hoots and howls echoed all around. Jabba barked a command, and his rumbling laughter fell from above as the axe began to fall. Uselessly raising a protective arm, Longo screamed, "Ah!" and that's where the story ends. So, this is an absolutely incredible short story. I absolutely love this. There's actually quite a lot of meat to this story in comparison to some of the others, and it ties up a loose end. What happened to Longo Two Guns? And here he is summarily dispatched by the Gamorrean executioner Lomrock. I think this story is absolutely incredible, and it's great that it ties up a loose end. Ties perfectly into Bounty Hunter. It was nice that Django made an appearance there. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So I just really can't help but love some of the short stories that were a part of the Star Wars Mythos line. I think that they're really quite good overall. And I think that it's really cool that we got them. But there's no doubt that this is super obscure Star Wars EU lore. And I always thought of it as being like an online short story type of deal only. But I believe I found evidence that these were printed on cards, these short stories, and placed within the statues that you could order. So maybe these are some super rare, very like unheard of physical printings for these rare expanded universe media stories. I think these stories are terrific, honestly, and one of the crowning achievements of my life so far was that Joe Bongiorno, who is aware of most everything in the entire Star Wars fandom, did not know about the Mythos short stories. And there's actually an update day where he thanks me on his website for getting in touch with him and telling him about the Mythos stories. So now, hopefully, on the website, according to the update, you can find all 6 short stories and their backup links now, all on the timeline, which is so super cool. Probably one of the crowning achievements of my life to have contributed to the amazing resource that is StarWarsTimeline.net. I think these obscure stories, that whether online or having a limited physical release within the statues, is so super cool. And I just really like these very much. Which story is you guys' favorite of the 6? I have to say the Lomrock one is definitely my favorite by a mile, but I really do appreciate the contemplative nature of the Vader one, the Obi-Wan one, the Maul one's very enthralling. The Boba Fett one's alright. It depicts new events with new characters, but it's kind of vague and short. But overall, these stories are all quite fun and welcome additions to the EU timeline as far as I'm concerned. I think they're great. They don't contradict things, and they tie up some loose ends from the EU and make some EU connections, which is so super cool. What else could you ask for? And thus ends another obscure Star Wars EU video. But don't fret, because I'll join you next time with more obscure Star Wars EU. Then I'll be talking about a video game. So I'll see you guys for that one.